What if the kindest man in the city was hiding a monster inside him? And what if that monster was not a stranger, but the truth he had buried for years? Tonight, inside the dark library, we open one of the most famous and disturbing stories ever written. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is not just a story about a scientist, a potion, or a mysterious man walking through the foggy streets of London. It is a story about something much closer to us. It is about the secret war inside the human heart, the polite face we show the world, and the hidden desires we are afraid to admit. The good person we want to be, and the darker voice that whispers when nobody is watching. That is why this old book still matters today. Because even now, in a world of phones, cameras, social media, and bright electric lights, people still hide parts of themselves. A person can smile in public and suffer in private. A person can appear successful, gentle, and respectable, while carrying a secret hunger for power, freedom, revenge, or escape. Robert Louis Stevenson understood something frightening. Sometimes the greatest haunted house is not a mansion on a hill. Sometimes it is the human soul. So come closer. The fire is low. The rain is tapping softly against the high windows of the old library. Dust floats through the candlelight like tiny ghosts. Somewhere in the shelves, an old book opens by itself. Its pages smell of smoke, ink, and forgotten secrets. And there, written in dark letters, is the name of a man who tried to divide himself in two. Dr. Henry Jekyll. He was respected. He was wealthy. He was educated. He had a fine home, good friends, a strong reputation, and a place of honor in society. In the eyes of the world, Dr. Jekyll was a good man. He gave dinners. He helped others. He spoke with intelligence and charm. If you saw him at a gathering, you would think, here is a man who has mastered himself. But the truth was darker. Because Dr. Jekyll had spent many years studying not only science, but his own heart. And the more he looked inside himself, the more frightened he became. He realized that he was not one simple person. He was not only good. He was not only noble. Inside him, there were two strong forces fighting for control. One side wanted honor, kindness, respect, and peace. The other side wanted pleasure without consequences. It wanted freedom without guilt. It wanted to do whatever it desired and never pay the price. Many people feel this battle in small ways. We want to be patient, but anger rises. We want to tell the truth, but a lie feels easier. We want to forgive, but pride tastes sweeter. We want to be good, but temptation waits in the dark like a door half open. Most of us learn to live with that battle. We struggle, we fail, we try again. But Dr. Jekyll did not want to struggle anymore. He wanted a shortcut. He asked a dangerous question. What if a man could separate the good from the evil inside him? What if the dark side could have its own body, its own face, its own name? What if Dr. Jekyll could remain clean, respected, and innocent, while another version of himself walked out into the night and did all the things he was too ashamed to do? That was the beginning of his fall. The story begins not with Jekyll, but with another man, Mr. Utterson, a serious lawyer with a quiet mind and a loyal heart. Mr. Utterson was not dramatic. He was not a man of wild emotions. He did not chase gossip. He did not believe every rumor that passed through London. But when something troubled him, he held on to it like a locked case that needed opening. One evening, while walking through the city with his cousin, Mr. Enfield, Utterson heard a strange story about a door. Not a grand door, not the front entrance of a mansion, just a plain, ugly door on a quiet street. The building around it looked neglected and cold, as if the person inside wanted no beauty, no welcome, no friendship. It stood like a scar in the middle of respectable London. Enfield told Utterson that, months before, he had been walking home late at night. The city was almost empty. The lamps burned through the fog. The streets were silent in that strange way cities become silent after midnight, when every footstep sounds guilty. Then Enfield saw a little girl running around a corner. At the same moment, a small, strange-looking man came walking quickly from the other direction. They collided. The girl fell. But the man did not stop with concern. He did not kneel down to help her. He did not show shock or regret. Instead, he stepped over her as if she were nothing more than mud in the street. That one moment told Enfield everything he needed to know. There was something deeply wrong with this man. Not just rude, not just cold. Wrong in a way that made the body react before the mind understood. People gathered. The child's family arrived. A doctor came. Everyone looked at the man with disgust, yet they could not explain exactly why he seemed so hateful. His face was not easy to describe. His body was not clearly deformed. But everyone who looked at him felt the same thing, a deep dislike, almost fear, as if nature itself had whispered, "Do not trust this person." The man's name was Edward Hyde. To avoid a public scandal, Hyde agreed to pay money to the child's family. But here came the stranger part. He took them to that ugly door, went inside, and returned with a check signed by another man. Dr. Henry Jekyll. When Utterson heard this, something cold moved through him. Dr. Jekyll was his old friend, a good man, a respected man. Why would such a person have any connection to Edward Hyde? This is the first great shadow of the story. Evil often does not arrive with loud music and warning signs. Sometimes it comes through a side door. Sometimes it is connected to a good name. Sometimes the most frightening question is not, who is the monster? But, who is protecting him? Utterson could not forget the story. The ugly door stayed in his mind. The name Hyde stayed in his mind even more. And then he remembered something else. Dr. Jekyll had made a will. In that will, if Jekyll died or disappeared, all his property would go to Edward Hyde. This made no sense. Why would Jekyll leave everything to a cruel, unknown man? Why would he give so much power to someone who seemed so dangerous? Utterson began to fear that Hyde had some kind of hold over Jekyll. Maybe Hyde knew a secret from Jekyll's past. Maybe he was blackmailing him. Maybe the good doctor was trapped. So Utterson decided to watch for Hyde. Night after night, he came to the ugly door. The fog wrapped around the street. The lamps made small circles of yellow light. Carriages passed in the distance. London breathed in the darkness. And then, at last, Hyde appeared. Utterson saw him clearly enough to feel that same strange horror others had felt. Hyde was small. He moved quickly. His manner was sharp and unpleasant. But again, the worst part was not something Utterson could easily name. It was the feeling Hyde created. Looking at him was like hearing a note played badly on a violin. The mind could not explain it, but the soul disliked it. Utterson spoke to him. Hyde answered with suspicion. When Utterson asked to see his face, Hyde revealed it for a moment. That was enough. Utterson felt shaken. He later thought that if he had ever seen the face of pure evil, it had worn the expression of Edward Hyde. Here the story asks us a hard question. Why do we sometimes sense danger before we can explain it? Why do some people make us uneasy, even before they speak much? Stevenson gives Hyde a strange power. He is not frightening because he looks like a monster from a fairy tale. He is frightening because he looks almost human, but something in him seems unfinished, twisted, and morally broken. Utterson went to visit Dr. Jekyll. Jekyll's house was large and respectable, but it had a strange arrangement. The front looked proper and wealthy, but the back connected to a laboratory and dissecting room, the same building with the ugly door. It was as if Jekyll's life had two entrances, one for society and one for secrecy. That image matters. Many people have a front door and a back door in their own lives. The front door is what the world sees. The back door is where the hidden habits live, the secret anger, the secret addiction, the secret shame, the secret ambition. We may decorate the front of ourselves while leaving the back in darkness. At first, Jekyll tried to dismiss Utterson's worries. He smiled. He spoke warmly. He said he could get rid of Hyde whenever he wanted. He asked Utterson not to interfere, but Utterson could feel that his friend was not at peace. Behind Jekyll's polite words, there was fear. Then something terrible happened. About a year later, London was shaken by a brutal crime. A respected old gentleman named Sir Danvers Carew was murdered in the street at night. A witness saw the attack from a window. She saw Hyde meet the old man. Sir Danvers seemed polite and gentle, but Hyde suddenly exploded with rage. He struck the old man again and again with terrifying violence, using a cane that broke under the force. The city was horrified. This was no small act of cruelty. This was evil without control. Hyde had crossed a line that could not be hidden with money or polite explanations. He had become a murderer. When Utterson heard that the broken cane belonged to Jekyll, his fear deepened. The connection between Jekyll and Hyde was no longer just strange. It was dangerous. Utterson went to Hyde's rooms. They were in a poor, dirty part of the city, but inside, the rooms showed signs of money and taste. Fine things were scattered among disorder. It was as if Hyde enjoyed comfort but had no respect for anything. The police found part of the broken cane. Hyde himself was gone. Now the mystery became darker. Utterson went again to Jekyll. This time, Jekyll looked deeply shaken. He swore that he was finished with Hyde forever. He claimed Hyde had disappeared and would never return. He showed Utterson a letter, supposedly from Hyde, saying that Jekyll did not need to worry about him. For a while, it seemed as if Jekyll had truly escaped. He became social again. He invited friends. He returned to kindness and good works. The shadow lifted. It seemed as if the doctor had woken from a nightmare. But evil rarely leaves so easily when we have invited it in. After some weeks, Jekyll changed again. He shut himself away. He refused visitors. His servant, Poole, became worried. His friends became confused. Utterson tried to see him, but Jekyll would not open the door. Around this time, another friend, Dr. Lanyon, became deathly ill after seeing something that terrified him beyond words. Lanyon had once been a strong, practical, confident man, but after one terrible night, his face changed. His spirit seemed broken. He told Utterson that he wanted nothing more to do with Dr. Jekyll. Then Lanyon died. Before his death, he left a sealed letter for Utterson, with instructions not to open it until Jekyll had died or disappeared. Now the story feels like a room full of locked boxes. The will, the door, the letter, the laboratory, the hidden friendship between Jekyll and Hyde. Every answer is sealed away. Every clue leads to another shadow. One evening, Utterson and Enfield were walking again near the ugly door. They looked up and saw Dr. Jekyll sitting at a window above the courtyard. For a brief moment, Jekyll spoke with them. He seemed sad, lonely, and trapped. The friends encouraged him to come outside, but he said he could not. Then, suddenly, something happened to his face. A look of horror passed over him. It was so terrible that Utterson and Enfield froze. The window was shut quickly. The conversation ended. The two men walked away in silence. Sometimes a face reveals the truth before words do. Jekyll's face showed a man who had looked into hell and recognized something there. Then came the final night. Poole, Jekyll's loyal servant, came to Utterson in fear. He believed something terrible had happened inside the laboratory. His master had locked himself away for days. The voice behind the door did not sound like Jekyll. Strange notes had been sent out, asking for certain chemicals. Poole had gone from pharmacy to pharmacy, but whatever he brought back was rejected. The person inside kept saying the chemicals were not pure enough. Poole was terrified that Jekyll had been murdered, and that someone else was hiding in the room. So Utterson followed him through the dark streets to Jekyll's house. The servants were gathered in fear. The house felt like a place waiting for judgment. They moved toward the laboratory. The air was cold. The firelight flickered. Behind the locked door, they could hear movement. Utterson called out to Jekyll. The voice that answered was strange. It begged to be left alone. Poole whispered that it was not his master's voice. Then Poole told Utterson something even worse. He had seen the figure inside. It was smaller than Jekyll. It moved differently. It wore clothes too large for its body. Utterson understood what Poole was afraid to say. Hyde was inside. Together, they broke down the door. The sound of the axe striking the wood echoed through the house like thunder. Each blow felt like the breaking of a secret that had been protected too long. Finally, the door gave way. Inside the laboratory, they found Edward Hyde lying on the floor, dressed in Dr. Jekyll's clothes. He was dead, apparently by his own hand. The room was full of papers, chemicals, and signs of desperate work. But Dr. Jekyll was nowhere to be found. There was no hidden exit, no body, no answer. Only papers. Utterson found a letter addressed to him, and with that letter, the final truth began to open. First, Utterson read Dr. Lannion's account. Lannion explained that one night he had received an urgent message from Jekyll, asking him to go to Jekyll's laboratory, take certain powders and a vial, and wait at home for a man who would come at midnight. Lannion thought the request sounded insane, but because Jekyll had been his friend, he obeyed. At midnight, a strange man arrived. It was Hyde. He was nervous, excited, and desperate. He took the chemicals and mixed them. Then he asked Lannion whether he wanted to see what would happen or whether he preferred to remain ignorant. Lannion, being a man of science, chose to watch. Hyde drank the mixture, and before Lannion's eyes, his body changed. The small, hateful figure twisted, struggled, and transformed into Dr. Henry Jekyll. That sight destroyed Lannion's peace forever. Imagine what that moment means. A man of reason, a man who trusts the world to follow rules, sees the impossible happen in front of him. But worse than the physical transformation is the moral one. Lannion realizes that his respected friend and the hated Hyde are not two men. They are one. The monster was not attacking Jekyll from outside. The monster was Jekyll, released. After reading Lannion's account, Utterson opened Jekyll's own confession. Now Dr. Jekyll spoke from beyond the grave. He explained that from youth he had felt divided. He had a desire to be respected, but also a desire for pleasures he considered shameful. He did not want to give up either side. He wanted both, the honor of goodness and the freedom of evil. So he used science to search for a way to separate the two parts of himself. At last, he created a drug that changed his body and personality. When he drank it, he became Edward Hyde. Hyde was smaller, younger, and physically different because Jekyll believed his evil side had been less developed in public life. His good side had grown strong through habit, reputation, and discipline. But his evil side had been hidden, compressed, and waiting. When Hyde appeared, he felt freedom. No more reputation, no more shame, no more need to act like a gentleman. Hyde could walk through the city and do whatever he wanted. If people hated him, it did not matter. The consequences belonged to Hyde, not Jekyll. At least, that is what Jekyll told himself. This is one of the most dangerous lies in the story. Jekyll believed he could separate action from responsibility. He believed he could sin with one face and remain innocent with another. But life does not work that way. A mask does not remove guilt. A secret identity does not erase the soul. What we do in the dark still shapes who we become in the light. At first, Jekyll could control the change. He drank the potion and became Hyde. Later, he drank again and returned to Jekyll. It seemed like a miracle. It seemed like power. But every time he became Hyde, Hyde grew stronger. Jekyll began to enjoy the escape. He could be respected by day and wild by night. The city became his playground. Fog covered his tracks. The ugly door became his entrance into a second life. But Hyde was not just a costume. Hyde was a living appetite. He had no conscience to slow him down. He did not feel guilt the way Jekyll did. He was anger, pride, cruelty, and desire given a human shape. Then came the murder of Sir Danvers Carew. That act terrified Jekyll. He saw clearly that Hyde could destroy everything. Not only his reputation, but innocent lives. For a time, Jekyll swore to end it. He stopped taking the potion. He returned to charity, friendship, and normal life. But inside, the desire did not die. It waited. One day, Jekyll was sitting in a park, thinking about his life. He felt proud of himself for leaving Hyde behind. He compared himself to other people and decided he was still better than many of them. That pride was dangerous, because the moment he admired his own goodness too much, the hidden darkness stirred. Suddenly, without taking the potion, Jekyll began to change. In public, in daylight, his body twisted, his hands changed, His clothes hung differently. He looked down and saw the hand of Edward Hyde. This was the beginning of the end. Now Jekyll understood that he was losing control. Hyde no longer needed to be invited. Hyde could appear on his own. Think about that in modern life. A person thinks they control their anger because they only release it sometimes. Then one day it erupts at the wrong moment. A person thinks they control a secret habit because they can stop whenever they want. Then one day the habit controls them. A person thinks the lie is small. Then the lie builds a house around them, and they become a prisoner inside it. Jekyll had opened a door in himself, and now he could not close it. He rushed to find help. Because he was trapped as Hyde, he could not safely enter his own house through the front. He had to use fear, planning, and secrecy to get the chemicals he needed. This led to the night when Dr. Lanyon saw the transformation and learned the truth. After that, Jekyll's life became a prison. He would change into Hyde without warning. He needed the potion to return to himself, but the supply of the special chemical began to fail. He searched for more. He sent servants to every place he could. Again and again, the new chemicals did not work. Perhaps the original ingredient had contained some unknown impurity that made the potion possible. Without it, he was doomed. This detail is terrifying because it shows how little control Jekyll ever had. He thought he had mastered nature. He thought he had mastered morality. He thought he had mastered himself. But his entire double life depended on a chemical accident he did not fully understand. That is how temptation often works. It makes people feel powerful while quietly making them dependent. Jekyll's final days were full of horror. He knew Hyde was waiting inside him. He knew the change would come. He hated Hyde, yet Hyde was part of him. He feared death, yet he feared living as Hyde even more. He wrote his confession while he still had the mind and hand of Jekyll. He knew that soon his better self might disappear forever. The man who had once enjoyed secret freedom now begged for one last moment of control. Then Hyde returned. And when Utterson and Poole broke into the room, the story had already ended. The respected doctor was gone. The evil double was dead. And the truth remained on the page like a warning written in smoke. One man had two souls. But the evil one did not come from another world. It came from within. That is what makes this story so powerful after so many years. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is not only about science, it is about self-deception. Jekyll did not fall because he was curious alone. Curiosity can be noble. Science can be noble. The search for truth can help humanity. Jekyll fell because he wanted knowledge without wisdom, freedom without responsibility, pleasure without consequence. He wanted to split himself so he could protect his reputation while feeding his darkness. And that is a very human temptation. People still do it today, just without a potion. They create different versions of themselves. One version at work, one version online, one version with family, one version in secret. Sometimes this is harmless. We all act differently in different places. But when the hidden version becomes cruel, dishonest, or addicted to power, the danger begins. The mask becomes stronger than the face. Hyde is not scary because he is supernatural. Hyde is scary because he is possible. He is what happens when a person removes shame, removes empathy, removes responsibility, and says, "Only my desire matters." And Jekyll is tragic because he knew better. He was not ignorant. He was not poor in education. He was not without friends. He had everything that should have helped him choose wisely. But intelligence does not save a person from pride. Reputation does not save a person from temptation. A beautiful house does not mean the soul inside is clean. The old story asks us to look honestly at ourselves. What do we hide? What door do we keep locked? What part of us do we pretend does not exist? The lesson is not that every person is secretly evil. The lesson is that every person must be honest about the darkness they carry. Because what we deny can grow stronger. What we excuse can become a habit. What we feed in secret can one day speak with our voice, wear our clothes, and make our choices. Dr. Jekyll wanted to destroy his inner conflict by dividing himself. But the real path is not division. It is responsibility. It is humility. It is admitting, I am capable of wrong, so I must choose carefully. It is asking for help before the door locks from the inside. It is understanding that goodness is not a mask we wear in public. Goodness is a battle we fight when no one is watching. And maybe that is why, after the final page is turned, the story still follows us. Because somewhere in the fog of every human heart, there is a quiet street. There is a respectable house. There is an ugly door. And behind that door, something is waiting to be named. So tonight, as the candles burn low in the dark library, remember Dr. Jekyll. Remember the man who thought he could become two people and escape the cost of being one. Remember Mr. Hyde, the shadow that grew stronger every time it was allowed to walk free. And ask yourself this before you leave the room. Are you mastering your darkness? Or are you secretly giving it a key? If you want the next forgotten classic story, subscribe and enter the dark library again.